Good morning, this is Attorney Vincent Davis. This is Get Your Kids Back Now. This show is dedicated to keeping families together and fighting CPS and DCFS social workers. A secondary purpose of this show is to educate parents and relatives, or to at least show them where to get the necessary information for their fight. The final purpose of the show is to remind the people that change can be effectuated at the ballot boxes, at the state and federal levels. Let us unite, vote, and elect those who will make the necessary changes. Good morning. Today we have a very special show. We are having a special guest. His name is Mr. Terry Greenstein. Mr. Greenstein was a social worker for, I believe, over a decade with the county of Riverside, and he was a CPS social worker. He has now decided to leave the agency, and he works on his own, primarily in a consulting practice where he consults with attorneys and families on how to defeat Child Protective Services. I've used Mr. Greenstein in a few cases where I have gone to juvenile court to get children back. Excuse me, and I've also used him in several cases where I'm suing social workers in the federal court. I used him as an expert to testify to the level of competence and standard of care of social workers in civil rights cases. Good morning, Terry. Are you there?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
I would say a long time no see, but I saw you in court the other day.
Yeah, an exciting day.
Terry, do me a favor. Tell our listeners something about your background.
Okay. I have been working in the mental health field since 1985, specializing in working with children and chemical dependencies. But I spent 14 years working for Riverside County Child Protective Services as a social worker / child abuse investigator, which really opened my eyes to the system.
And what are you doing now?
Right now, I am the proud owner and president of TEG Consulting. What I have done is I've taken my experience as a social worker, and now I help families who have been wronged by Child Protective Services, and I help them figure it out and come and testify if I have to, or write reports if I have to. And I also work on civil lawsuits, federal civil lawsuits against county and child welfare agencies.
Very good. What's your, if I were a listener and I wanted to get a hold of you and talk to you, why don't you give us your office number and your email address?
My office number is 951-236-2379. My website is tegconsultant.org, all one word, and my email is teggreenstein@yahoo.com.
You know what, Terry, I didn't really understand when you said your email address. Did you say P or T?
T.
Okay, give the email address one more time.
Okay, it's T.E. Greenstein. I was trying to spell it out. At yahoo.com. Greenstein is Greenstein. So it's T as in Tom, E as in Edward, Greenstein at yahoo.com.
Perfect. Thank you, Terry. Terry, one of the things that you just said a few moments ago, that when you worked for the County of Riverside for Child Protective Services, that it, quote, opened your eyes. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think I was pretty naive when I started working for the county as far as child abuse. And because I was trained specially for child sexual abuse and child physical abuse, I got those cases. And it opened my eyes to the types of abuse that can happen to children and the mistakes that social workers make when dealing with families.
So, presently, you have your consulting services. Without mentioning names, are you working on any cases that might be interesting, the story or the background to our listeners?
Yes, I'm working on a case right now. Basically, this was a child sexual abuse case or investigation, and the social worker did not follow protocol at all. There's specific, let me back up. Since the McMartin incident back in the mid-80s, forensic interviewing of children has really developed into not only an art but a science. And that came out of that incident. The social worker in this case did not do a forensic interview and really, I have to say, really messed up the case because the information is so convoluted now. The child was interviewed more than once, which you're not supposed to do. Basically, on a child sex abuse investigation, is when we do a minimal field interview with the child, and we just get the basic facts. And if the child admits sexual abuse, we stop the interview right there, and we coordinate with law enforcement. And we do in Riverside, which is we did an Arcadia, which basically was an intervention team, and we had a forensic social worker, and we would have the room with the double glass, and the detective and I would sit in one room, and the forensic interviewer would sit in the other room and interview the child. One interview, that's it. Minimal trauma to a child. Now, in this case, they did everything backwards, and I don't understand why the children are still removed from the parents. So that's what I'm going to be testifying about. The social worker made many mistakes in policy and procedure, and that's what will get them.
Okay. Terry, I want to thank you for calling in today and sharing some of your experiences with us. Why don't you tell us one more time your telephone number and your email address in case our listeners or want to hire you or talk to you about separate cases that they're working on.
Sure. Again, the website is tegconsultant.org, all one word. My phone number is 951-236-2379, and my email is tegreenstein@yahoo.com.
Terry, thank you very much for calling in. Hopefully we can get you back on the show and we can talk about other subjects.
Oh, I would love to. I have a list of mistakes people make when dealing with Child Protective Services, and I would love to talk about that so the audience has a defense when the social worker knocks on the door.
You know what, Terry? We should have talked about that today. You know what? I'd like to devote a whole show to that. I'm sure our listeners would like to hear from a social worker's perspective what not to do when dealing with CPS.
Exactly.
Thank you, Terry.
Anybody who... All right, thank you, Barry. Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Wow, I wish I would have known he wanted to talk about that. That's a show just by itself, and we're going to have a 14-year retired Child Protective Services worker, tell us what not to do when we have contact with social workers.